Hey, welcome back to the Wacky Wonderful Show. I am Joe.
I am Wyatt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the channel if you haven't been here before. What we've been doing is this is week number 4.
Is it really?
Could be week number... I'm losing track.
I didn't mean to question you on that. That was supposed to be lighthearted. Oh, is it really? And
is it really?
Yes.
We've been doing a handful of weeks on Star Wars. So I've been looking at filmmaking and enjoying the filmmaking aspects of Star Wars, and you've been looking deep into story arcs, character studies, the meaning behind Star Wars and the storytelling there. And so we do, if you're not familiar, we do separate clips and kind of catered to our specialty a little bit there. So far, Wyatt, what is something, have you learned through your studies or through anything, something new about Star Wars?
Something new about Star Wars.
I'll tell you this. I learned a lot about Ahsoka. Your video last week really explained Ahsoka's life progress, the big moments, and the important moments that she has gone throughout her life up until the current story timeline that we saw in Book of Boba Fett. And so I know there's going to be more revealed when the Ahsoka show comes out, but good grief, I didn't know as much about Ahsoka, and so it's super cool, like her being a Padawan of Anakin and seeing the contrast between her and Luke, as Anakin both being a father figure to them, and to see how each of them pursued a similar goal out of love for Anakin. Yeah. And one turned out, tragic but okay, and the other one did not so much,
Yeah. Man. I mean, I'm always learning like little factoids, but nothing like vastly new that I haven't already seen before.
Yeah.
Just things like I'm going to be talking a little bit about why the Clone Wars happened and sort of some of the impacts that it had.
Yeah.
But what I didn't know that the conflict had started about 2 years previous.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
For the Clone Wars. So
when you come into it in the Phantom Menace, it's the Separatists trying to gain control of Naboo.
Gotcha.
And so, but there was already, like star systems seceding from the Galactic Republic.
Okay.
So they had already kind of established the Separatist order.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So we're gonna hear more about that tonight, I'm guessing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Very cool. I think I enjoy doing this, even if online we don't provide a lot of people knowledge. I think it's super educational for me because I'm constantly looking for ways to understand better storytelling, understand better ways of storycraft, and then even sharpen my own ability to say, can I visually see something and be able to explain it to aspiring cinematographers?
I mean, I learn things from your videos every time we see them. Like
that one thing.
Like that one thing. No, I'm always learning something about, different cameras, different camera angles, different lighting situations, how to make a scene look like scenes do.
Yeah. You want a tip on cinematography that I haven't really shared?
Ooh.
When it comes to lighting, well, first off, before camera selection, before really anything, lighting is going to be what gives you a cinematic image across the board. If you have interesting, complex lighting, it's going to look more cinematic.
Okay.
Because in real life, lights are constantly hitting everywhere. Cinematic simply means it feels artistic, but is convincing you of real life.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And so in a lot of ways, lighting is what's the word? Not optional. Lighting is deterministic.
Okay.
So lighting is actually always evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Lighting, like the amount of light you needed in the old days of filmmaking is so different from today.
Yeah.
So today, you might say, to make this shot cinematic, everything looks great, but we're going to get something that's more dim than a cell phone flashlight, right?
Yeah.
A cell phone flashlight is pretty already dim. But if you like, for example, if I throw a light on my face, that does a lot.
Yeah.
But imagine if this light's way over here.
Mm-hmm.
See that just tiny little touch?
Yeah.
See the little touch on my face? That is significant in the world of filmmaking.
Okay.
And they aren't using these big expensive lights a lot of times to give themselves what they need. A lot of times they are just the tiniest little thing.
Yeah.
And so across the board, lighting is ultimately your best friend.
And it's even changing as we go into more animated things.
Yes.
When you get stuff like what they did with Luke in the Book of Boba Fett.
Yes.
They have to not just think about how they're lighting his face, but how is the lighting interacting with his physical form?
Absolutely.
Because we have subsurface scattering. That's when the light hits your face and, it goes through your hand and it's red, or it goes through your ear.
Yep.
Or it creates a kind of almost a different color on your skin because you're getting light from over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's subsurface scattering. And when you're dealing with animated things,
Especially outside,
or even inside with a lot of lights around, you're dealing with a lot of different lighting things.
Absolutely.
That are not, that animation doesn't just have naturally like we do.
Yeah.
Our skin naturally scatters the light.
Yes, absolutely. And the cool thing is about deep fakes is you can program a deep fake onto somebody. And you can even get professionals to deep fake and make it look really convincing. But when it comes to lighting, you have to have a real artist to look at it and be like, the shadows are off.
Shadows are on. Yeah.
Know what I'm saying?
Are you making a reference?
No.
Are you making a reference?
Maybe.
To what?
If you got it, you got it.
I feel like I don't got it.
It's all right. It's all right.
All right.
Don't worry about it. But look, we're going to get into this. I'm going to look at the Ahsoka versus the Magistrate fight scene.
Okay.
It's kind of inspired by old samurai films. It's super cool looking. And it builds emotion in an interesting way. I'm going to be looking at framing, the shots they chose to use, and show a couple behind-the-scenes pictures in order to get us started. So we kind of know the environment and the tools they're working with as we go through this.
All right.
So, and then you're going to come in, and what are you going to talk about?
I'm going to be talking about impact and kind of the start, like how the Clone Wars started.
How the Clone Wars started. And I guess the impact of
and a little bit
what it had on the galaxy. Yeah. So the Clone Wars is significant. Wyatt's going to teach us all about it. So let's go ahead and get into it, and we'll be back at the end to close out this video and give some more thoughts about Star Wars. All right, let's start. Hey everybody, welcome back to the studio. So glad you're here to go with me on a journey watching a scene from the Star Wars universe, specifically the Ahsoka versus the Magistrate fight scene. It's super interesting. It's based on some old samurai style fight scenes that they filmed this in. And so from a filmmaking perspective, I'm going to go through and I'm going to watch it. I actually personally believe that if you watch films or shows or anything cinematic and artistic, and you know what to look for, that actually you can learn the skills of cinematic lighting, composition, storytelling visually, And all you have to do is know what to look for. And so I'm here in these videos to kind of give you a basic understanding of some of these filmmaking principles and point them out so that when you see them in your own content, you can enjoy them. I've personally made a handful of short films, and I've created all kinds of content from podcasts to commercials. I have a good bit of experience under my belt. I wouldn't say I'm perfect, but I would say, according to the average person, I have a good eye for these things. So if we look at what they're working with here on set, they actually have 2 cameras in this shot. This is a behind the scenes shot. They're working with cameras that are set up on dolly systems or trucking systems. So on the right side of the screen here, they actually have a camera on a truck track, and that's to move side to side to follow the action. And, you know, during fight scenes, it's really important that you have a large variety of movement. The cool thing about this is it's parallel with the bridge that they'll be fighting on, so that they're not going to be moving too far around because they have to stay on the bridge. So that's a really cool concept, just to get a nice profile of the fight itself. And then you obviously have this kind of free dolly on wheels track that is, they can go back and forth. They can get nice over-the-shoulder shots. They can get long over-the-shoulder shots. Whatever they want to do, they have the freedom to get, as long as that man operating it is, operating it correctly. So they also have cameras on rigs, so I believe these are probably being controlled in a different location on set, so they can get a better view and they can actually control it remotely, the cameras and everything. So really the guys that we're seeing here, for the most part, they are more controlling the functions. Maybe not. That guy on the right side, he looks like he's actually operating the camera as a traditional cameraman. So let's go ahead and move over to the video. And we're going to go ahead and watch this scene, and we're going to basically look at the variety of shots in order to put together a fight scene of this nature and how they crafted it a little bit. So see, we saw that there's profile shots and over-the-shoulder shots from that one. So let's see how they incorporate that into the fight scene itself. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, nice little open transition to the scene. Okay. So right now we're getting kind of this, it's not over the shoulder, but it's a similar angle. It's probably a off of the bridge, super zoomed in shot of these 2 characters, but at a similar angle that you would get if they were close to each other, and getting it over the shoulder. Got a beautiful wide shot. Okay, so this is kind of an over the shoulder, and then okay, yeah, let's admire this for a moment. The set is very elaborate in this scene. And as I said before, it's really inspired by kind of these old samurai fighting scenes. And so if you look at the sky up here, all of this is actually the LED walls. It's the volume. And this building back here, those are also on the LED wall in the volume. This tree right here is probably a practical set piece, and obviously the bridge is a practical set piece. I've talked about this many times, so I won't keep pointing this out, but just notice for the 180-degree rule, they have chosen a side, and it is obviously on this side of the bridge. So if you make a line with the characters, it goes straight across, and so basically they're not going to go on this side of the line. They're going to stay on this side of the line. Make sense? All right, let's go ahead and keep watching. I love the contrast between them. It's very similar angles. It's these wide shots where they almost have the individual that we're looking over in the center, but not really, because I think if we actually angle it down, it looks like the center is about right there. And so they're kind of creating this contrast so that you can know exactly where they are in the scene mixed with them where they are on the bridge. So you really get a good sense of distance. Let's also point out just the fact that there's leading lines in these shots. So if you're not familiar with the leading line, it's things that point to the focus. The cool thing about this whole bridge is a leading line. So she's face forward here, and she has her back to the camera, so the focus is Ahsoka. Whereas, like, if we were to rewind just a moment, we have the exact contrast. We have leading lines here, and her Ahsoka's back is to the camera, so the focus is the Magistrate. I love how those sabers breaks the silence. It almost catches you off guard because this whole, however long this is, 47, almost 50 seconds is almost complete silence. It's a very low wind rustle, and you see that visually, that wind in the blowing of their clothes. It's very like traditional, it almost feels like anime in some way, but it's a very traditional, cool, dramatic samurai style. So let's keep watching. Also, I kind of am getting a feeling that I didn't see previously. There are a lot of leading lines in these images and framing. So let me point something out real quick to you. I really like this shot of Ahsoka because it's not just leading lines. You also have framing. So see where she's standing? You actually have a beautiful box that frames her out on the two sides, and it makes her pop more because she's on a dark background. Unfortunately, I don't think they got the exact same with her, the Magistrate. No, she's just standing in front of a pillar. And these actually kind of work as leading lines also. They're literally pointing toward the direction of Ahsoka here. And you notice at this point, every single shot, they're mirroring each other. Every cut is a mirror of the other person. Like they're the same framing, the same edited together. The intensity builds. It keeps the same mirroring contrast between the framing, the shot, and the intensity. I love the water. It's such a great effect. And then think about this too. Because they're in the volume and these lightsabers are also practical effects, it's not animation. These reflections in the water, those are all real. All of these little light glimmers, that's all real. The audio mixing is so cool in this. We're already seeing examples of how they were utilizing the shots and the camera setups that we saw. So right now, this is an over the shoulder of the Magistrate. So we literally know that camera on wheels we saw, this is a shot taken from that camera. And then a few seconds back, so right here, this is that dolly shot that they were on that second camera. And so it's parallel with the bridge. It's going to follow the action back and forth. Now, this is a wider shot, so they could zoom in closer, put a different lens on it, and get closer to the action, but I think they do a variety of takes, obviously, and they get different versions. So this is a nice full shot from kind of head to toe, a little looser than that, of the two characters fighting. Notice the shots are getting a little bit more quick on the cuts because the intensity is rising. Gosh, I love this. I love these little spots of light. These little spots of light make things so much more interesting and dynamic and contrast well with the movement of the light from Ahsoka's sabers. And there's an extreme wide. That's actually a different spot. So if you look, the track in the behind the scenes shot was actually kind of set up here, or it looked to be anyway. So this is actually a different angle that's further back. But if we back up just a few seconds, All of this at this point is still like, this is the over the shoulder shot of Ahsoka, and this looks to be that like a closer shot of that side to side dolly we saw in the behind the scenes picture. So they are getting a variety of shots from that same location. And notice it was right there. They flipped sides. So they haven't changed sides with the camera, but they changed sides with the actors. During the fight, Ahsoka went to the right side of the frame and the Magistrate went to the left side. So during the fight, they flipped. So the 180-degree rule is consistent, but it showed the flip. So that's important. Notice how quick these shots are becoming. Again, they're still mirroring each other with the framing here. So she has a nice long shot over the shoulder, and it's kind of contrasted with this medium shot. It goes from this medium shot to show the reaction because she kind of got the upper hand for a second there, and then it moves to this sort of long over the shoulder kind of medium shot of Ahsoka. So they're constantly mirroring each other in this fight. If they're not face to face, the cuts back and forth, they're mirroring each other with the framing. So far, for the past couple seconds, everything's been over the shoulder. There we go. That was one shot that I think that was a big moment in the fight right there, where we got an actual side profile. Man, if you look at the details of this, it's so beautiful. Let's keep going.
Now tell me.
I think we end with a couple similar shots, but check this out. Once again, it's that side profile face-off. And this just establishes once more that they did indeed switch sides because they are on the other side. So each one's eye line is looking a different direction. You see that? So let's finish it off, and then I'll go through the shots that I saw and kind of what I think they took for them to film a scene like this.
Now tell me. Where is your master? Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn?
Beautiful. So I just want to quickly end with kind of a few ideas about if I was going to film a scene like this. And obviously when it comes to editing, it's the art behind the pacing is going to be in the editing. And it's a little bit in the motion of the actor, but all of that can be adjusted in editing. So if I was going to film a complex fight scene like this and show off the art as much as possible, I think there's roughly three kind of boundaries of framing. You have the extreme wide, which we see at the very end here. Right here is the extreme wide. It's that long shot or that wide shot of showing the whole bridge and the characters and the environment. Then you obviously have these over-the-shoulder shots. And I'm going to quantify this as kind of on the bridge over the shoulder because it was on wheels. You can get it as close or as far away as you want. And so if they're saying, let's get the same shot, a take two, but let's actually loosen up a little bit on the camera, well, you can just keep doing it over and over again. So a lot of this is actually a mix between those three, the wide shot, the over the shoulders, and then that kind of halfway side profile shot that we saw. There's actually one other shot that I pointed out at the beginning that shows up a couple times in the fight, and that is this side angle. So it's not on the bridge, but it's actually off to the side. And let's see if I can find a spot where they show it in the fight as well. So it's a side angle that they show from both sides. It's not in the center, it's an over the shoulder wide. So you see the water down here, and you also see the sky up above them. So if I was going to shoot this, I would say we're going to start wide and work our way in. So we'd start by doing the whole routine wide, then we'd get the side shots, then we get that side profile shot that's kind of on top of the water, that dolly back and forth that truck back and forth shot, and then I'd get on the bridge and do the over the shoulders. It looked like from their perspective, they did a little bit of the over the shoulders and the medium truck shot in the water at the same time. But either way, it's gets kind of left up to the director. It's not super complex. It really isn't. And you can actually break down how it felt on production day for the crew, for the director, for the actors, of how they went through to film this. If you just break it down, and really the magic, the look, and the intensity is in the edit at the end of the day, because the shots themselves were thought through but simple, and they stayed consistent. They really only had a small handful of camera setups throughout this whole shoot. So I thought that was super interesting to look at something that's so incredibly artistic, thought through, and inspiring for creatives, but also see that if you break it apart, you kind of dissect it, you can see that it's actually not that hard, kind of manageable when you think about it. And that's inspiring for people like me, because I look at sometimes big films and I'm like, will I be able to reach or attain that kind of artistic and high production value? And if you just think about it, yes, you can, as long as you prepare, you plan, you communicate well, and then you execute and try to execute to the best of your ability, and you'll get there. So thanks so much for watching. If this is interesting or entertaining or informative, I would ask you that you would subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. Tell me what your favorite scene from The Mandalorian, or possibly even the Book of Boba Fett, was, and maybe even what kind of scenes you would be interested in hearing me break down from Star Wars. I love the franchise. I think it's a lot of fun, and even now with the new technology of production, it's even more interesting and engaging, if we're being honest with ourselves. So there's no more interesting, fun time to get into cinema as today. So thank you for watching. If you're interested in this kind of content, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it. Now, Wyatt's going to come in. He's going to talk a little bit about the story of Star Wars, specifically the Clone Wars. He's going to break down the impact it had on the galaxy and kind of answer the question, how did it get started? So he's going to come in, do that in just a moment. Stick around.
We are going to be looking at Star Wars, exploring kind of the story elements surrounding the Clone Wars, how it started and how it impacts the galaxy as a whole and impacts the story moving into some of the later films and in the early films. I think if you look at the story of Star Wars and you analyze kind of down to some of the specific things that happen and some of the nuances, you can get a feel for how the storytelling carries through the movies, into the shows, and into the original trilogy that most people are the most familiar with. So let's get into it. And before we move to our slides, I want to kind of establish the Clone Wars started because there was disagreements between the Separatists and the Galactic Republic. And this was actually happening about 2 years before the events that we see on Naboo, where they create a blockade around Naboo and try to take control of the planet. There were several star systems, quite a few star systems, that seceded from the Galactic Republic, and the events that are taking place in the movies and in the shows are because of the war between the two over holding planets, holding star systems, trade routes, and that kind of stuff, the political stuff. But really, where the Clone Wars starts is Emperor Palpatine. His plan, his goal to become the Emperor, to become the number one ruler of the entire galaxy, is the reason that the Clone Wars starts, because he's the one who instigates it. Now, in my research, I couldn't find if he was involved those 2 years previous in instigating the certain star systems, instigating their separation from the Galactic Republic, but I'm sure he was involved in there somewhere. But in the current day, he's playing both sides against each other. He is playing the senator on the Galactic Republic side, and he is manipulating the Separatists as Darth Sidious. So first and foremost, he started planning the clones years in advance, establishing that Jedi Master Sifo-Dyas asked for the creation of the clones, then implementing the plan of the inhibitor chip that would allow him to execute Order 66 and kill all the Jedi. At the very beginning, he kind of draws a line. We know the Galactic Republic and the Separatists. He creates two parties who are clashing against each other. Then he creates armies for both sides to be able to clash. Once that happens, he makes sure that the conflict is as widespread as possible. This is a galaxy. Many of these star systems are who knows how many light years away from each other. And so the conflict between the planets, the conflict between the two entities is very widespread throughout the galaxy. And that follows his plan to a T, because once the clones get involved in the war, he establishes a familiarization with the presence of the clones. Now you have a quote-unquote good army of clones who are coming in to run out the Separatists who are taking control of planets. So on the planets where the Separatists aren't wanted, the clone presence is there to let the people know that they're safe and to familiarize them with the clones being there. And this idea goes so far as to have, even if you watch the show, some clones, I believe there was an episode about a clone who deserted. He was dissatisfied with the way that the war was going and decided that he wanted a family and settled down on a planet to raise a wife and kids. You have this intermingling with the clone troopers and with the people of the planets, really to gain that trust. Once the conflict is as big as possible, it's as widespread as possible, Emperor Palpatine, or Senator Palpatine at the time, has identified the big players. All the big players on the Galactic Republic and the Separatist side. These are all potential enemies. Even the Separatist side, which is considered the evil or the villainous side, those are all powerful people in the galaxy who could oppose his reign. And once it's established who everybody is and where they stand on either side, Palpatine kind of knows where everybody's at. He knows what he's going to do with the Jedi, who are kind of the biggest power in the galaxy as far as ability and reach. And then now he knows who all the leaders, who all the players are on the Separatist side. So when Order 66 is enacted and all of the Jedi are taken out, again, because of that familiarization with the clones and everybody kind of trusting the clones at this point, the Jedi are, for the most part, destroyed and destabilized. Then he sends Anakin, or Darth Vader at this point, to Mustafar to get rid of all the big players on the Separatist side. And now he has eliminated all of his potential enemies who could get in the way of his machinations. Moving into kind of the impact of the Clone Wars, we know that like some of the aesthetic that we see in the old Star Wars movies is kind of it's a design choice based on what they had for making the movies at the time. But the way that the story tells it is it's because of the big conflict in the Clone Wars and then the large widespread conflict of the Empire taking over. So much of that aesthetic in story-wise is due to the destabilization of the galaxy's economy. When we have large-scale wars across vast landscapes and in space, on planets, there's a lot of destruction, and often the people running trade routes and the people delivering certain things are going to have issues doing their jobs. And so that also, I believe, was part of Palpatine's plan, was now that there's been such a widespread war, now that all of his adversaries are gone, and the galaxy is kind of in a state of weakness, he can take control with the clone troopers and with any other forces at his disposal, and basically conquer the entire galaxy with zero resistance. But of course, we know that this epic reign of the Empire didn't last very long. Only about 30-ish years, if that. My timing could be wrong on the whole thing. Maybe only about 25. I think Luke is about 24, 25-ish. The Empire doesn't last all that long, and it's because of kind of all these things that we've established previously. You know, the mass conflict, the fighting in multiple solar systems alongside multiple species with the clones, and then the subsequent fear of Darth Vader and the Emperor and the clones coming after everybody. The Emperor kind of created the type of people who would be able to take him down. Type of people who have been through war, who have fought alongside the Jedi, who fought alongside the clones. When you have such a massive war, you create people with experience. One of the big players being Bail Organa, who is Leia Organa's adopted father, was a politician and kind of leading and fighting alongside the Galactic Republic as they fought against the Separatists. And his knowledge and ability is used in creating and helping form the rebellion that we see in 4, 5, and 6. That knowledge and that experience also helps his daughter Leia as she starts to become a leader of the rebellion. And then, of course, you have characters that have been around since the start of the Clone Wars, namely Ahsoka Tano, who was training with Anakin Skywalker, saw basically the best and the worst a character could possibly see in the Star Wars universe. She fought alongside the clones. She was there when the clones turned against her. She fought against her master. She has had significant experience in war, and then after the Clone Wars, in the years of the Empire, of being able to hide out from the Empire. And most of the characters who helped establish the rebellion were extremely familiar with hiding from the Emperor and from Darth Vader. And then also you have Hera Syndulla, who was a child when the Clone Wars happened, and she didn't really get introduced into the conflict until after Order 66 happened. But again, her father was a politician. He was a leader. He imparted many of those lessons upon her. She used that knowledge as she grew older to help form the rebellion and to help get it moving in the way that it should be moving towards the ultimate goal. We see that kind of stuff happening in Star Wars Rebels. So that's a little bit of information on how and why the Clone Wars really started. It kind of all wrapped around Emperor Palpatine. And then a little bit on some of the impact that it's had for the characters, for the galaxy. All of those impacts and all of the things that we've talked about are vital to how the story moves throughout the years and throughout the different mediums that we have, whether it be the prequels, the Clone Wars, Rebels, or the original trilogy, and eventually the sequel movies as well. These are all things that drive story, that drive characters, and give impact to how they maneuver and how they interact with each other and the world around them. So if you enjoy this type of content and you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit that like button. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments below. What are some of the other big impacts and maybe a little bit more of the minutia around the Clone Wars? I know there's quite a bit in the Clone Wars TV show, a lot of stuff about the individual clones and how they interact with each other and the world around them. It's really good stuff. If you haven't seen the show, Star Wars The Clone Wars, definitely go check it out. But thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time.
If you were to look at the Clone Wars, and you were going to say, who's the biggest, most important character coming out of the Clone Wars into the original trilogy for A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, who might have been a character that survived, sustained, and then played a big role moving into
It's got to be Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan?
Obi-Wan is probably the most...
He's the connector guy.
Yeah, Obi-Wan connector.
Obi-Wan connector.
Yeah, he's... I think he plays the biggest part because he experiences everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, from the beginning...
As close to the
beginning as anybody could possibly be.
Not even close to the beginning, but literally, he personally was close to the main players.
Yeah.
He was close to Anakin, who was Palpatine's right-hand man.
Mm-hmm.
When he basically deconstructed his religion of Jediism
Mm-hmm.
and moved to a new form of the Force, and then became a different person, essentially. Yeah. It's a wild story when you get into it. I remember, if I'm looking at Star Wars, and I think I grew up watching Star Wars, and I remember the very first movie theater I ever went to, which actually wasn't even a movie theater. It was in a hotel, like, office room where they set up a projector, and it sat like 20 people.
Okay.
And the hotel's like, we're going to be watching Star Wars. What's the second one called?
Attack of the Clones?
Attack of the Clones, yeah.
Okay.
We're watching Star Wars Attack of the Clones.
Prequel.
The prequel.
Okay.
That's when I was a little young boy, and that movie came out. That was the first theater experience that I ever went to, and I remember it so vividly. I was like, holy crap, these clones, and Padme has a belly button, and
thinking about that belly button.
that navel shot. And I just thought about, like, what a love story, and why is Star Wars making such a love story out of this?
Yeah.
And then I remember thinking back to Empire Strikes Back when I was a kid, and just thinking, like, that there are kind of scary moments in that film, and I'm nervous to watch, but I love me some Star Wars. I actually personally like The Phantom Menace because at no point did it scare me.
Yeah.
And you had all the cool, you had the race scene, you had the epic fight with Darth Maul. Just a lot of good stuff in The Phantom Menace as a young boy.
I remember somebody telling me about Revenge of the Sith, the third one, and being like, dude, Anakin is lit on fire and burned alive. And I was like, yeah, I don't really want to watch that. I was probably like 10 years old or something. And I was like, I don't want to watch that. It wasn't until I don't know how much longer, probably months or maybe even a couple years later that I actually watched the movie. And I was like, oh yeah, no, he legit gets burned alive. Holy crap. That's in like a PG-13 movie?
Yeah.
Wow.
But the blood is limited.
The blood is.
There's not a lot of blood.
Not a lot of blood when you're
Good bit
dealing
of
with
charred
blaster
flesh.
bolts and lightsabers.
Yeah, they cauterize everything they touch.
Yeah.
What about flames from the lava?
Yeah.
When he gets burned alive?
Yeah.
That would have produced a little bit of juice, wouldn't it?
It was, I guess. It was tough to watch. One thing that's been sticking in my mind since the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
This show, not the Star Wars. What did you mean when you said the shadows are off? I'm still on that.
I think it's a reference to somebody's stand-up special.
Okay.
That's why I didn't want to get into this.
Oh, okay.
It's not a deep reference.
Because I feel like I couldn't understand if it was a reference for me or a reference for them.
Now I presented it wrong.
Okay.
I did a little smile, and I shouldn't have done a smile. I should have just moved on.
Yeah.
My bad.
Because it's been knocking around in my head this entire time. Oh, man.
Just thinking about the shadows are off.
I think that's what, I think that's, when I was going through my thing.
No, that's the reason?
I was like.
The shadows
I
are
know, it wasn't
off.
the shadows. But, no, you were talking about how old samurai, how very old samurai movie that scene is with Ahsoka and the Magistrate.
Even the environment that they set up for that scene.
extremely samurai.
Extreme.
You were talking about
Dave
how,
Filoni said it himself in,
Yeah.
in a behind the scenes
you
interview.
were talking about how, you know, it takes them like almost a minute before they even start fighting, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's very samurai.
Samurai's got to like kneel down. They have to pray.
Yeah.
They have to get up, draw their swords, clean their swords.
You know, roll up their sleeves, everything, get into their stance, and then you're like, oh, I love how the lightsabers break that silence.
Yeah.
And that's like shh.
Yeah.
You know, you get that wind.
Yeah.
And then once that sword is drawn, it breaks the silence.
And it's mixed so incredibly interestingly.
It's very good.
It's so funny. They chose, and this is what I like about what's going on with Star Wars right now.
Mm-hmm.
Even the scenes that's just like, oh, these are two characters that are going to combat each other.
Mm-hmm.
Even with Cad Bane, we saw this. They are constantly pulling and introducing ideas, genres, filming style, unnecessarily. You could just give us a cool fight scene in the woods like we saw with, you know, Rey, or what's his face from the other end, Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren,
Yeah,
Rey.
Finn. Yeah. They could have just given us like a fight in the woods, like the climax of the J.J. Abrams first film after the originals. And I think episode 7. So, but they don't. They go really complex, and they're like, we're going to give you a moment in this show that is going to be nostalgic. It's going to wow the audience. It's going to wow the artists and creators and people like me who are looking to like, look at them leading lines, man.
Yeah.
Look at how those shots are mirroring each other.
Well, also
perfectly.
You know, you said complex, but I mean, from what you showed, there were like 3 cameras. There were definitely more cameras. Probably.
Well, maybe not. We only saw
but
2.
From what we saw, there was an over-the-shoulder camera that was on the same bridge they were on.
Yeah, and so you got to get
shoulder shots.
both sides. Some are long shots from
Yeah.
knees up, some are waist up, and some are this close.
There's the one on the track to give you that medium shot,
Yeah.
and then there's the one to give that
behind.
wide.
And you also have ones on the corners that are also wide. So that's what I was saying. The style is not just in the cinematography, it's also in the edit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The shots themselves, at least the composition, the setup, the production of filming isn't that hard.
Yeah.
However, the edit was thought through before they started rolling, what the scene's going to look like, what the composition is going to show. That was thought through.
Yeah.
And then also the literal design of the world, the physical world they're on top of, the water surrounding them, that's real water. And then the volume, like the design for what the background's going to be, that building that's behind them, the majority of the time, that's on the wall.
And you even going further as to kind of simplify the fight, because we know Ahsoka. If you've seen the Clone Wars, if you've seen Rebels, you know her fighting style is very arms forward. You know, attack, defend, attack. Yeah. And she's always constantly moving, spinning, jumping, moving.
They gave her a flip in that scene.
They all of the fighting combat seems very Ahsoka, but it feels very grounded.
Yeah, because it's live action.
And it almost feels, if you know Ahsoka and you know her skill level, I mean, she's gone up against Darth Vader.
And Darth Maul.
And Darth Maul. And Darth Vader, she went up against, you know, not too much further, not too many years before this.
Yeah.
So it almost feels like in fighting the Magistrate that she was holding back a little bit.
I think she was getting a feel. She hadn't, I don't think, as far as I know, she hadn't come across that style of weapon before.
Yeah,
that her sabers can't penetrate.
Right.
That is not another saber.
She's fighting somebody else who can actually fight back.
Yeah.
And I mean, at this point, she probably hasn't done that in quite a while. So, you know, I feel like she was like testing her skill, but also holding back a little bit, because you see once she bumps the lightsaber out of her hand and she twists around to that underhand style to
Yeah.
switch it up to
Yeah.
kind of confuse the magistrate
like
on what she.
Game's over.
Because she's completely changing her style of fighting now
Mhm.
by using this, lightsaber down grip.
Yeah.
She takes her out in just a couple moves.
Just a couple.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's beautiful, and the cool thing about it is those sabers are real crafted
Yeah.
sabers.
Provide that epic light on their faces, on the ground, in
Yeah.
the water.
Yeah.
That's some
I'm
cool
not sure
stuff.
if they enhanced them at all,
I'm sure they did.
but if you look behind the scenes, it's actually there, and it looks
Yeah.
like she's freaking holding real lightsabers.
And they almost have a different wobble to
Yeah.
normal lightsabers. They almost flicker a little bit more.
Mhm.
That a normal lightsaber is very kind of static,
Yeah.
with a little bit of pulsation. But these almost flicker and have a different sound. I love it, man.
Yeah. Completely different.
They get
sound
really
than original.
creative.
They're getting wildly creative, and I'm here for it. I'm
Yeah.
happy for it. I love all these call outs. And this was an older scene from season 1 of Mandalorian.
Season 2.
Was that season 2?
Season 2.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah.
Season 2. Either way, it's earlier, and then you see it constantly in the Book of Boba Fett as well.
Yeah.
And I'm super looking forward to seeing what they do with Ahsoka. Which, after editing your video from last week, I believe, according to the artwork of the Ahsoka, it's going to have to deal with that kind of time-traveling realm.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of Ahsoka's survival story, why she's here today.
And even in that clip that you showed, she asks the magistrate where Admiral Thrawn is.
Yeah.
Thrawn's a big player if you watched Rebels.
Yeah, and you've made videos about Admiral Thrawn.
I've talked about him.
And so you can just check out, I think it's week 1 of the Star Wars series.
Yeah, I talked a little bit. I think I've talked a little bit about Thrawn.
You explained him pretty well.
Yeah, like 2 videos.
Yeah,
especially.
but the first time you brought up Thrawn, week 1, you went, I think you spent probably like 7 minutes on Thrawn.
It's because I think he's going to be a big player in the future.
Especially Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking about what you need to know.
Yes.
What you need to know
about the next generation of Star Wars or something.
What's going to happen in the future based on what they've already shown.
Yes.
Thrawn's going to be a big player.
That's an important video to watch. Once you wrap up here, if you haven't already, go watch that video. You can either watch the full Wacky Wonderful Show, or you can go to the Wiseworks Studio channel and watch just Wyatt's clip there. That's just his clip, singled out, so you don't have to scrub through the whole show. I think that's about it for this week, Mum Dude. I think next week we should probably, or I think we actually might be taking a week off.
Okay.
I think we're going to take a week off, so don't expect a Wacky Wonderful next week. Just some scheduling issues for production. It's a part of life. But we'll be back 2 weeks from now. So if you want to catch up on any old Wacky Wonderfuls you haven't watched, next week's the time to do it.
Yeah.
Because once we come back in 2 weeks, it's going to be full on finishing up Star Wars. I think we got 2 more weeks of Star Wars.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for watching. We love you. If you're interested in supporting us on Patreon, do so. The link is in the description. We'd love you for that as well. And you get your name and credits for like the podcast and I think even the show.
Yeah.
So there's, benefits.
We might even talk to you in the comments on Patreon.
Not that we don't do that now on the YouTube. We definitely will talk to you on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next Wacky Wonderful or the Wisework podcast.
See ya.